Oh boy. Hello, everybody. You might notice that there are just two of us here this week, which is not unusual most weeks. This week, that might be a little unusual, though. Last week, we said we would have a guest. Last week, we said we're going to be interviewing somebody. Things changed last minute. This time, we came equipped with a plan. We were better to pivot this week than we were a few weeks ago when I had 5 other things on my mind and agenda that needed to happen. So, we're here. For those of you who don't know us and for whom this is your first episode, it is our 41st. But for those of you whom are brand new with us, hello, my name is Emmerron. I am a mostly a professional GM these days over on StartPlaying. And I run, oh boy, holy moly, a hype train just started on my end of things here. I need to merge.
Yep, same side.
Let me
merge the chats.
Merge the streams real quick. But yes, I'm mostly a professional GM on StartPlaying, and I help run this podcast at the bare minimum every week as far as content creation on Twitch and YouTube. Joining me, of course, as always, is my co-host.
Hello everybody, I am Diamond Dust. I am a net running VTuber and also mainly a content creator over on Twitch. I've been diving a lot into Star Citizen recently, but I do a lot of Cyberpunk Red, especially on Wednesday nights. We have a whole campaign going. This last week, I took a spin on a classic story from Tales of Red Street Stories, and well, it may involve clowns now. That being said, Emmerron, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so being that this is one of those odd episodes, and I'm the odd one here, so I get to lead all this. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys for the hype train, by the way. I know those of you who are listening to this on Spotify or watching on YouTube, this won't matter to any of you. It matters deeply to me, though. Thank you guys for the support, though. I greatly appreciate that. That's super cool of you all. So we are talking today. This again was kind of our last minute pivot where I'm like, okay, Diamond, we need a solution, something that'll entertain them, something that will put them on the edge of their seats. And I don't know much about making Hollywood level action scenes or anything like that. But I know that usually it comes with a surprise. Usually it comes with that thing you didn't expect, didn't see coming, the twist. And what greater twist is there than the twist that even the GM doesn't see coming? We're going to be talking about random encounters. So random encounters in Cyberpunk Red are kind of interesting because they're one of those things that I feel, at least at my table and other tables that I have been a player at, they aren't super common in a lot of the games that I've been party to, one way or the other. At my own table, it's mostly just because I don't want to do the fiddling mid-session with like rolling on a table, pulling the mooks out. And because I do most of my games these days on a virtual tabletop, it requires me setting up a scene and defining like where everyone is starting, where everyone's going. It's a lot. It's something that I don't care personally too much to dive into. But that said, it is not to say that that does not have its place at the table. I just know that a lot of GMs that I've played under, a lot of the GMs that are a lot of the players, I should say, that I've played running the game for, most of them don't really mind because a lot of the scene setting that you do plan around to a certain extent with like, okay, this will be a cliffhanger encounter within the overall context of whatever gig or adventure arc I'm wanting to run, that all can kind of work out in the way that I've kind of planned for it, if I just run it as is without needing to introduce random variables. Diamond, how often have you typically implemented random encounter stuff within the broad context of your campaign writing and stuff like that?
So I personally love using random encounters to spice up travel, especially if you're on foot or if you're, on the train, because it adds a level of life to it, level of life to the city, and also, if we're using random encounters, I assume we're using what's out of the back of the book, correct? Like we're looking at that area.
That is the most easily accessible one for sure. Like you could go through the trouble of like making your own random tables and stuff. I know, like, depending on the content that I was really trying to like dig into, I might think to do something like that. Obviously things like the Black Friday DLC thing, not DLC, we can't call it DLC, but the supplement we came up with, the homebrew supplement for Black Friday shopping, like you could easily invent like a random roll table for something like that. That also gives a degree of random encounter to that overall scene. But yeah, like for the start at the very least, we're talking about the base one at the back of the core rulebook.
So one of the other things with random encounters that I have found useful is it's a good way to kind of shake up the, like, I will sometimes do it to shake up the party and use some of the resources from time to time, because sometimes their pockets are a little too full. You gotta be a good GM and help make their pockets a little lighter. So send a booster gang, send the cops that might be looking to be able to purchase a 100 Eddie donuts, things like that.
Sure.
I'm not saying all cops are looking for
Bribes.
Bribes, not brats. Bribes. I mean, brats are good, but bribes.
I mean, wasn't there a side quest in Phantom Liberty about a guy opening a hot dog stand? Like, he was a cop too, wasn't he?
Yeah, because well, actually, I'm not gonna give too much, but you do encounter Sasha's older sibling, or younger sibling in that one.
Yeah, I think so. Something like that. It was a fun little quest. I liked that mission a lot, but it was when you mentioned cops and brats, I'm like, hold on, there's precedent for that particular combo in Cyberpunk. That's tangential.
Scop worst. Anyway,
I'll take it.
So I have had random encounters lead to side quests that it's just like, this wasn't the plan for today, but this actually panned out quite nicely. This is fine. With encounters in the red, of course, the way that they have it, they have the table set. The lower the number, the more likely that threat's going to be in a green zone, or probably not even the executive zone, but probably just the
usual green zones. Yeah, like the ones where it's like Little Europe or the Upper Marina, Watson, those places that are more like the central city that have a pretty defined police presence, response times, all of that sort of stuff.
And then also, depending on the time of day as well, things can get much more dangerous.
Yep.
I remember one time, literally our first random encounter was a cyber psycho.
They happened.
It was a bad time.
Yeah. No, it's cyber. I mean, look, cyber psycho dropping in at any time is typically not a great time. When you're low, like really low rank, new to the game, like you're coming in like as a fresh character, cyber psycho random encounter right out the gate that's a lot. It's a lot to deal with when you're brand new, especially if you don't have a lot of people on your party who are like really on top of handling hardened enemies, doing stuff like 8 reflex bullet dodging stuff. Like if you're not hardened, that really hurts. Cyber psychos are spooky. grenade launchers hurt a lot if they can land the hits, and Cyber Psychos I think have like a base 14 or something like that, and they typically just need to beat a DV15, so they're beating it on a 2-up, which is just like, and they've got 2 of those things before they need to reload either one, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, no, psychos suck. So, there are some comments I see coming in chat real quick about this, and so I think I want to talk about these as we kind of get them, because this will give us a little bit of diversity to talk about. So LCC says that, in his opinion, using random encounters just as a background thing is useful, especially in combat zones. You make it to the bar, down the block you notice a rolls random encounter. Gunfight going in between the iron sights and RCL. Yeah, like that is probably, I will say, when I have used random encounters, because I've used them a little bit. In Neon Inferno and stuff, not quite as much recently, but like in the broader context of just my campaigns historically, I've definitely used them more as that. Or when I'm like, the party has gone way off script. That's kind of a way that I've also found like a connection to like lead them back, basically, is if I roll a random encounter and I'm like, yeah, you know what? There it is. That's the bridge back to the path. That they kind of need to go down to progress the story in a way that makes sense. That is kind of another way you can use it as kind of a deflection point back to the prime narrative that you want to tell. Again, never really want to railroad, but definitely if things go too far off script, that's something where like a random encounter can help, especially if you're maybe a newer GM and improv isn't really your thing. Like nowadays, what I would have used a background random encounter roll for, I just kind of improv it and just pull it out of nowhere on my own. But like that I know is not something that like just anyone is able to do, especially if you're less practiced with doing that, or less confident in just like throwing something on the wall, see if it sticks. That is another way to utilize it in a more kind of constrained, controlled way. Also, if your nomad is hellbent, sleeping in their car in combat zone to avoid paying for rent. Yeah, rolling 1 during the night really ratchets up tension, delivers on the dangers of the area. Yeah, no, that's very true. Nomad sleeping in their car is like, that's an interesting discussion in and of itself that we might have one day, in terms of like economic, like people trying to cheat economics and how the GM can kind of fire back if people are trying to be really egregious about cheating the economics in the game. Because like there's a lot of groups, I think, especially when they're new to Cyberpunk as players, that they look at here's all the ways in which I could make money in the game. Like techs and nomads are kind of the 2 prime examples of this, I think, where like nomads are like, well, I can ferry goods, so theoretically I could try and get a gig to haul something valuable and then just steal it. Or the techs could be like, well, I can just spend enough time that I make an item that is worth enough money to cover my rent for the month, and then give me the ability to do that kind of recursively every single month, slowly building up money as I go along. There's a lot of ways to fire back against that, but that is the rent control thing that nomads have by living out of their car is a notable one that I don't want to deny them, because that is one of the things that makes the role really appealing. On the other hand, though, it is definitely not without its own risks and potential hazards. But yeah, so Diamond, I know I've been talking for a bit. Did you have anything you wanted to add on either of those?
With me, when I do random encounters, when I look at stuff like, especially like nomad, I've had nomad that was sleeping in their car, and this was they knew They knew a gang war was up. They knew that a couple of gangs were not happy with each other. It was middle of July. It was hot. People were pissed off with each other. And this was leading up to the events of Red Chrome Cargo. Lo and behold, suddenly there's 4 Red Chrome Legionnaires ripping open the door, trying to get in to get some fucking free wheels, and
oh boy.
Like, but why? And it's like, well, it just so happened there were some booster gangers passing through, and your car looks a little too nice for this neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's probably the only functional car they've seen in this neighborhood.
Yeah, right. That didn't have bullet holes riddled all alongside it, kind of thing. That is, yeah. It's not about, well, my car is a jumbled together mess of different parts like most Nomad vehicles. It's, yes, it is, but the bullet holes, or lack thereof in your case, really does tell you what car is and isn't good in the neighborhood that you're currently camping in. It's a very, very fair thing. It's fun too when you were talking about like, oh yeah, let's have like a mook, like just make a problem by stealing something, putting their little raccoon hands up in the pockets of the players and taking all the good stuff, taking money out of their wallets. I'm just imagining. This is very cruel, by the way, to any prospective GMs out there who might take this idea and run with it. But the rules in Danger Gal dossier for Mook level enemies suggest giving their important skills a base of 14 and their secondary skills to those a base of 12. So I'm now imagining like a base 14 stealth pickpocket Mook of some kind.
Have one.
I figured you do when you started talking like you did, but that's where I'm just like, that's mean.
I mean, look, sometimes you don't walk up on Joy Toys you don't know. They will take more than you were thinking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's how I lifted a text modified excellent quality pistol before.
My wife and Erica, for those of you who saw season 1 of Neon Inferno, you already know Erica. She's the one who played Pixel and Persephone. The character that she played in that was recycled from an earlier campaign that we did privately before I was doing this on streams and stuff like that. And my wife followed her into this same base character archetype. Little different. My wife's was a little more psychopathic. My wife usually played the solo. She played a fixer this go around. Erica, meanwhile, played Pixel, the same Pixel that you all know and love. They both decided a character creation that they were going to, instead of taking armor jack, they were both going to take subdermal armor as cyberware, because both of them told me, Charlie, we want to dress our characters as scantily as possible and basically disarm the horny public and use that as a tactic. And I'm like, I love it, but at the same time, holy shit, guys. Like, that's kind of twisted and evil. And they both looked at me like, and you thought we'd do something moral? I'm like, no, honestly, but that's beside the point. So like, there is something really funny when you mention the don't trust a random Joy Toy. I'm like, yeah, they basically played up to that archetype as player characters, and it led to some very interesting encounters that they kind of navigated their way through in a way that other characters probably couldn't, because they really focused a lot of their stuff into like wardrobe style and personal grooming and all that sort of stuff, right? And their fashion choices and things like that. And they're like, we'll always have armor. And I'm like, yeah, you will. You'll always have armor. No matter, even if you're like stark naked, you will have armor. There is nothing preventing that from, or nothing threatening that being taken from you, essentially. So like, other than like maybe someone EMPing you, maybe. But like, even then, I don't know. That actually raised an interesting question. Again, we're tangenting like crazy, guys. I'm so sorry, but I did say this was a pivot last second. I'm kind of curious, Diamond, how would you rule it if someone shut down subdermal armor with like an EMP or microwaver? Would you give them the armor still?
Well, I imagine your subdermal armor, it flexes and adjusts to the impact. So if it doesn't have the ability to flex and adjust to the impact, then it's basically a useless mesh that just sits on your skin. So
got it. So some of it is the nanites being able to like actively respond to the trauma. That makes sense. That makes sense.
One of my other favorite things to do with random encounters as well, chat, and I highly advise this. If a job is just going a little too well, or like the party is just kind of like everything's going fine, scavs. Scavs are the best. Scavs are basically the gift that keeps on giving. You know, hey, we're about to come up on this cache that we were supposed to. I'm a little congested for some reason, but you know, we're about to come up on this cache that we were supposed to find. Why is it not here? There's footprints. There's a lot of footprints.
Lots of them.
Scavs. Which between that or you know, and like no, the scavs are not free IP. We do not do that over here in Cyberpunk. You don't grind for XP by just killing the same low-level gonks.
Death does not equal progress. Death is death. There is a very, very big difference. But one thing you could say about scavs, if you manage to find a whole hive of them, is free loot. Because they probably, just like a bunch of the rats that they are, they probably gathered all the shiny things into one little pile for you somewhere.
Of course.
You just got to find it. So, like, yeah.
Scavs are just the gift that keeps on giving, in my opinion. Yeah. Like, and they're super, it's super flexible. Scavs can show up anywhere.
Facts.
They're like roaches.
They are.
So one thing that I'll do is if a job's just going too well, maybe the location is currently occupied by either a booster gang, a scav gang, and every once in a while, if I feel this party really needs like a real hard break check, because it'd be great, especially corporate threat areas. I'll roll and it's just like, okay, I'm gonna put people here. I'm going to occupy this space. I'm going to put witnesses here.
That's
all right,
that's
party.
See, the funny thing is, like, even if you roll on the table there and get something threatening to the party, like a booster gang or something, like even in those corporate threat ratings, you still have a risk there because, yeah, sure, those witnesses are less likely to like call up the NCPD on you, but at the same time, they're probably going to do something about it themselves. Like, they just saw you tear through. So unless like that's like an enemy they have a blood feud with of some kind, like you're probably still on their shit list somehow, or at the very least they know who you are now. So if you ever come for them, they're going to know what you're using. Like, we've talked about this before too. Like, if the enemy is intelligent enough to be aware of like, oh yeah, they've got that one guy who has like a minigun that he pulls out at every chance he gets. They got another one there who's going to try and sweet talk his way in up front. Then they've got the netrunner in the back, and she's going to like burn out whatever net you've got set up. So basically you need to prepare for all of these threats in particular. Like, if they know that and they have observed it, you doing some op, and they've gotten a moderate idea of like, okay, here's what their team looks like. Here's what they're capable of. If you ever go for them, they'll be prepared. Like, that's the crazy thing about that. So you also can kind of set up encounters to be harder by total random chance by doing exactly what Diamond just suggested, which is kind of incredible.
Also on top of that, random encounters. I like to also use random encounters when I am generating jobs. So, for example, I'm going to pull up a D100 here.
Sure.
Okay, so job's going well, but one of the things between you and between you and getting to where you need to be, Trauma Team happens to be present in the area.
That's fun.
And there is that 50-50 chance that you are going to get smoked by either a Militech Cowboy or a Tsunami Arms Helix if you look like a problem to Trauma Team.
Well, that almost reminds me too of like there's some cases in 2077, and I think of all the ways I died to this stuff, and it always there's never a part of me that feels like, oh, that was fair. Like, it usually feels kind of like bullshit in the video game because it's just like reliant on your situational awareness, and the response always felt like extremely disproportional. But TTRPG, you can tone it down or modify it to fit your vibe, right? But there would be those cases where either the NCPD or some enforcement agency within the city had set up like a caution tape perimeter around something. Like, this usually happened to me more often in like downtown or Pacifica, where like, you're dealing with a lot of enemies kind of in the surrounding area already. And it just so happened that the police or Trauma Team or some biohazard unit had set up a perimeter, and you're like skirmishing with someone on the other side, right? You've got, your gun out, you're shooting back and forth, you're quick hacking, whatever. You're backing up or strafing, and all of a sudden you strafe across that caution line. And then the NCPD or Trauma Team or the Biohaz unit immediately take onus to that. They take umbrage to that, and they're just like, all right, so this guy's gonna die now. And it's like, what's going on? But I just think of something like that. Like, if you say, well, Trauma Team's in the area. Well, if Trauma Team hears gunshots coming from the alley just next door to where they're trying to run a recovery op, and maybe it was a particularly bad gang fight, and the guys you happened across maybe were on one side or the other of that fight, they might come to secure the area because they have a lot of bodies they still need to cart out of there, and hearing the gunshots that close is a threat to them. So now they need to come and deal with your ass because you're a problem in the immediate area, and they don't really care that it's you or the other guys. The fact is, guns are out, lead is flying, they need to contain it. So like that's another way you could use something like that, which is really, really kind of fun. Let's see. Another one that got me was good old stray bullets hitting the cops nearby, and suddenly you're fighting two groups. Exactly, yeah. And that's another way you could do it, is like, yeah, so just like maybe a block down the street, you've got, like a couple of cops, they've pulled over some nomad who is speeding in the city. We all know it happens all the time, right? And all of a sudden, one of those strays, maybe it doesn't even hit the cop, maybe it just shatters one of their rearview mirrors on the side of the car, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, get on the fucking ground, and they're just starting to storm in and surround you. Now you got a problem. Like, you could just do something like that, which it's really fun. Honestly, I think that's a grade A way to have a good time. At least if you're the GM. If you're the players, you might be like, fuck, need to like really scramble your plans quick to like get out of there without dying, kind of thing. That could be really fun. I like using them that way.
Also, something I highly recommend. You know how like there's that thing of if things are slowing down, make something explode. Oh yeah. I like to use arsonists. From time to time. Because suddenly, the job you're going is really well, but then you smell smoke. The building is on fire, and your way out is closing very quickly.
Or even better is like, oh man, because see, now you got me thinking about ops where like the group that hired you, whether it's an organization or a corporation, or even if it's just an individual maybe, who really wanted their tracks covered, but they're like, utterly incapable, but they got a fat wallet, they're like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll hire you guys, pay you $2,000 each, go in, deal with this problem that has suddenly, out of the blue, I had nothing to do with it. It's happening. It's coming for me, right? And like, what they do is they then hire a cleanup team behind you, essentially. And they say, okay, so once they've taken these guys out, made sure that the roach problem's dealt with, so to speak, I need you to burn it. All of it. The whole building, leave no evidence, no one alive. And so now,
I've
like...
seen this episode before.
Right, same here. But it's one of those things where, like, you do that, and then, like, you make it so that the players are in a really precarious position where they only have, like, 1 or 2 ways out, both of which have people at the door ready to ambush them, essentially. And because they've been hired to do exactly that. No survivors, no loose ends. And so it's one of those things where, like, you turn that whole thing into, like, a much more complicated scenario than it was initially even billed to be. Even if the initial scenario already warranted that $2,000 payment to not look suspicious. And so the party's like, their SP has been cut nearly in half. Their HP is looking not great. Even the med tech is like, okay, cool. We have just enough speed heal to, like, get you guys out of here with a moderate amount of health without serious injury. And then, yeah, you smell smoke and know that, oh, fuck, that was just phase 1. Like, it's, why is there new boss music? I hate this environment. Like, it's literally Elden Ring, fucking Melania. Just, it's like, oh, that was the hardest fight I've ever done. The hardest fight you've ever done so far.
Why is she getting back up?
She has a second phase, asshole. Yeah, like, the moment you realize, you're like, oh, shit. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah. So it's one of those things where, like, you can create that too out of it, where it's very, yeah, like you said, make something explode, set something on fire. Even threatening those things is already like, oh shit. Like, this is a wrench, a big wrench in the gears of the plan we cooked up, including, like, especially when it comes to evac or whatever extraction plan you have for after the op is done. Like, oh god, that sucks. Why do I suddenly hear Mick Gordon? Yeah, that's when you send the cyber psycho in and just sub the pop-up grenade launchers with fucking chain rips, and he's already got them out and revved. Like, there you go. No, that's fun. So one other thing you can do, and this is kind of layering things together, right? If you have the data pack has a ton of 20 people lists. And there are a few of these even kind of scattered around, like the ELO DLCs and stuff have a few of these too, where you have random people scattered throughout the city, and they also are roll tables. They're set up as D100 roll tables. So what you can do is roll on the random encounters list, and rather than taking the generic, like, people that they have situated in there, give them an identity then by, like, rolling on some of the 20 random people lists, or if you want to get spicy about it, you could even roll the subway list and be like, instead of it being on the subway, this person is suddenly much closer to you than maybe you'd be comfortable with on the sidewalk, in the position of whatever you rolled on the random encounter table. And this sure requires a few more dice rolls, but, like, it makes them feel more personal, right? Makes them feel more like a human that actually exists and lives in the world around the players, instead of it just being like yeah, it's another bag of HP that might be a problem you need to drill through, you know?
Societal danger, I think that actually happened in, was that over Neon Inferno? A Stalker X showing up?
Several Team Dream. I'm trying to think. Was there a Crazy X in Neon Inferno? Was there a Crazy X in Neon Inferno? Not crazy. No. So I think you are thinking of the right thing. You're thinking of Uriel, which was Wei's former fiance, essentially. But they didn't ever really properly split, and she wasn't truly Crazy X. She was more like they were driven apart by circumstance, and she just randomly broke into his window late at night, had a blade to his throat before realizing who he was. She was just told the guy in that apartment go kill him, and found out it's her former fiance, which is like, wait, what is going on? That was its own thing. But yeah, no, I have had the crazy Stalker X. That was one of my private campaigns before I started streaming. Funny enough, it was my wife's crazy X that came for the party at one point, and that woman was like a type A high-strung exec that absolutely wanted to like get rid of my wife after the things that happened in their relationship, kind of thing. So it's great. It was a lot of fun. I liked role playing that. It was a good time.
Also, Prepper Jack, Smokey the Cyber Bear arrives on the scene. He ain't here for picnic baskets.
Yeah, you've got some. You have the really funny thing is if you had Yogi and Boo Boo, and you had Yogi's the bigger one with like a more massive body. Boo Boo's it's like the little cub chip one, and this thing just has like a little audio vox implant. Hey Boo Boo, look, they ain't got no food. It could be a fun little poser gang thing. Could be the primetime players have something like that, dude. That would be
absolutely,
so good.
Absolutely. The primetime players would have somebody that's got the Ursa sculpt for that.
Oh, that's absolutely so funny. Holy shit.
One of my other things that sometimes I will go to is Cyborg. For just suddenly this thing happens. Which I know not Cyberpunk Red itself, but Cyborg does also have some great random encounters if you are looking for something like really out there as well.
Well, really gritty too. Like a lot of the Cyborg stuff is like we've described like Cyberpunk can get dark, right? Like and I know there's this discussion over on Reddit the other night about like how dark is Cyberpunk Red versus 2077. A lot of people were like, yeah, 77 feels grittier, and I was like, I disagree. I think Red is way darker and grittier than 77 is, but like minds can disagree on that. Cyborg is darker than all of them, like by a country mile. That's like pitch black cyberpunk stuff. So yeah, it's if you're looking for something really dark or really gritty, that's where you go to find it.
Ario Meat Wagon arrives a little too soon to. One of the other what I think probably one of my best random encounters involved them encountering actually locals. I think that's what it was. Locals. I rolled it. A couple of young folks came out, left. Well, the executive zone decided, get out from underneath mom and dad's watchful eye and go out and go see what the city's like, because they see they see the brain dances. They looked on the garden. They see all that shit going on out there. They out there trying to be a couple of wannabe punks, and then they've rolled up on and the party rolled up on these two young neighborhood Beaverville folk. I don't know what do we call what yuppies, or what would you call the young executive zone people that know that they're still curious about going out into the dangerous places?
Tourists probably.
Tourists. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
That's probably what the edge runners in the area at least would call them. They call them tourists. 100%.
Ages 19, 20, fresh out of high school, probably into college. They end up encountering encountering some people that want to, lighten their pockets of, whatever's inside.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was a good encounter that led to a interesting side quest down the road. Mm-hmm. That is some of the stuff that I look for. It's just like, okay, this did happen, but can a plot come from it? And that ended up leading into the events of bucket full of popcorn flavored kibble for one of my groups.
That's fun. That's fun. That's
like,
a good time.
Look, we don't have much, but we have this thing, and hands over the invitation.
I mean, that's pretty good. Like, yeah, the so I guess, because let me see, where are we at?
Oh, beavers. Okay.
Beavers is another good term. I just thought of, there's the scene where you, I think, what was it? It was you and Jackie in 2077. I think you show up to I think it's when you first show up to the afterlife. He comments on, there's like a line of people outside, and one of them's like down, like posing in front of the afterlife sign. And I think Jackie is the one who makes the comment, like, fucking tourists. And I'm like, yeah, that honestly is like a really good description of like what that is probably in the edge running world. It's like, if you're in a place like the afterlife and you're there to do biz and like be an edge runner and take contracts, you'd probably not look very kindly upon the people that are just there like, yeah, Chum, I got a photo in front of the afterlife, look at me. Like, it'd be you'd probably look at them very derisively. And similarly, that another great random encounter that, if it isn't somewhere on the tables, because it's been a while since I've looked at them and I don't have them memorized, if you don't have it in there already, maybe make it where like some random passerby on the street is one of those like tourist types, and that's like you're in the middle of a gang shootout and one of them just comes over, like agent up in their hand. They're like, all right, guys, check this shit out. I got real edge runners behind me. I'm in the middle of an actual fucking firefight. This is great. And like, meanwhile, you've got to like not try to shoot them because they're in front of an audience and they probably have money. Like, the agent looks nice. Their clothes look way too nice for the environment. Like, it could be really funny to just have someone who has like no self-regard for like their own safety.
I think that's actually one of the media encounters in there. Oh yes, a 2-person camera and interviewer team staking out a building on a hot assignment. Roll a d10. On 1 through 5, they're spotted by their story subject and conflict ensues. You, of course, are right in the middle of it.
Yeah, see, like, my thing is more like very much like IRL streamer vibes of like someone's got their stream running on the guard, like, yeah, Sup Night City, your real boy street man here, and I'm here to bring you live action from the fucking South Night City combat zone. Check this shit. And they just flip the camera and it's actually like a gunfight between the iron sights at RCL, and it's like, this shit's getting crazy and I'm right in the middle of it, bringing you the play-by-play action. Meanwhile, your crew shows up. Get the fuck out of here. Like, get out of our way. Whoa, these guys are harshing my vibe, Chooms. Like,
oh yeah, I can definitely see that being a variant of media, or at least a or maybe a rocker boy encounter.
100%. Yeah.
Which also, of course, sometimes these random encounters may not impact the party directly. However, I have had it before where the party had passed by a couple of suits because I rolled corporates and they let the suits go by quietly, and it just so happened one of them had their agent's ID lifted off because those Ziggurat execs happened to be looking for that party.
Oh, good.
It was like, oh, okay, so that's going to finally happen, because sometimes I save certain events for random encounters. It's just
Right.
like, okay, so that's when that's going to happen.
Right.
And, of course, they're wearing Kevlar, business suits, and they've got, medium pistols, because, you're an exec. What the fuck are you shooting at that's going to require more than 2d6 of firepower?
Yeah. Well, and this raises a very interesting method of random encounter kind of usability, let's say. Instead of running the random table at the back of the book, if you have a plan for something like what you just described, where you're like, okay, cool, I know I have like a host of like, let's say for simplicity's sake, because you've got, you don't want it to be too broad, but you want to have some random stuff happen. Maybe you make 6 events that you want to have happen throughout your campaign at a random juncture, right? And you, when the situation can crop up to one of those 6 events happening, assuming you aren't just rolling that as its own table, roll a d10 and pick whether it's, whether odds or evens, if you want it to be 50-50, or if you want it to be different than that, you just adjust the range or whatever. But roll and see like, okay, during this scene, this thing has an opportunity to happen, or maybe more generally, something on this table could happen. So we're going to roll on it, and then we're going to see if it actually does or doesn't happen, like by chance, right? Rather than rolling skill checks or something like that. So this is one way you could craft your own kind of random encounter tables in line with something like the rumor tables or the chaos tables of Hope Reborn, to allow for some more custom tailored like random encounter stuff. And you can even do this for like a particular op, right? Like another great example of something like this would be there's a table that you roll on in Drummer and the Whale for one of the beats in there, where you're trying to search for something, and there's like a table you're rolling on while you're searching to see like what comes up to meet you as you do that.
That is exactly what I was going to reference. It was the Drummer and the Whale event table.
Yeah.
Because I know there was some mixed feelings about how that thing played in particular from some groups. I personally like it because, maybe you haven't found the thing yet, but you come across something else.
I think the main complaint, I know my main complaint, is that they set the DVs for success a little too high on that. Because if your crew all suck at perception, there's like an in-baked, like, you've got to crit or whatever to like actually pass the check. It's not as easily passed unless you have like at least a base, probably 12. Like the base 12 gives you a 50-50 on it. A base 14 gives you like a 4 up. So you've got what, a 70% chance. So it's like, it's pretty unforgiving where that's concerned, and you'll run out of, like, with a group that sucks at perception, you're going to run out of random encounters. So I think that there's a limit, and I think that it's okay to kind of fudge that a little bit from what they have it written in that adventure for that reason alone. But that's just the way I run it. You GMs out there, if you know what we're talking about, you've seen it, you have a thought on it that's similar to ours, like, I'm sure you come up with your own solution, or you'll find one. But that random encounter table, to go back to the reason you brought it up, is a very good way of looking at a random encounter that is like more tailor-made for the context of an adventure or the events of the party's immediate surroundings, their context and stuff like that. So definitely I like stuff like that a lot.
Also, we've talked a lot about people that you could encounter, but hear me out. Have you ever thought about locations? Stumbling across places.
That's fun. For that, I recommend, because I don't think there's a ton of guidance on location-based stuff, at least not yet. We probably will get some, I would imagine, with Edgerunner's Guide to Night City. Like,
Yeah,
I
fair.
could, because especially since that is more of the locational stuff. There's a separate book right now that is agnostic of any one system, that I think I mentioned last week. Yeah, which is augmented reality. That is a great one. If you're like in a new area, you don't know it, you know, you're not a local expert in it. Like, and now with the Atlas, we have some like really concrete pinned down, like, okay, this exists here, this exists here, this exists here. But like, there's a lot more than just that one thing in that one area. So like, then you can roll some of the D100 tables from augmented reality and like figure it out real quick. Like, what is that thing? Yeah, I do like that idea too.
Because every once in a while, if like scene comes to a close and we decide, all right, fade to black, let's, especially because a group of a group of edge runners like to get high a lot, and it's just like, okay, well, you guys can feel your high coming down, and let's just see where you guys end up.
Right.
It's just like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. And it's like, do you have any unfinished business? No. Let's just see where we end up. And that led to the creation of Gino's Italian Deli over in Little Europe, where it's almost authentic, even to the point that the cashier will shoot you. Especially if you're taking too long. We fade back into just like, hey, are you gonna order something or not? And here's the rocker, and the way I paint it is the rocker boy's just been staring at the meat selection, like, you know,
just brain is unplugged, like, oh god, oh yeah,
and he just accepts his sandwich. I'm like,
Me?
yes, pal. I know why you're here.
Yeah, right. Oh my god, I'm just picturing like Stoner in a Jimmy John's line. That's what I'm picturing.
Very much.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, Gino's is like this little tiny deli shop that happens to get their hands on fresh cheese, fresh meat. Don't ask them where they got it from. They'll have to take you around back.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Gino
fun.
does not share his secrets. But other places that have developed random encounter, Fat Demon in a way. Actually, is that it? Oh yeah, there is a random encounter table in the core rulebook for bodegas as well.
Yep. Bodegas are fun.
Fat Demon in the Oasis, just, hey, you got a few weddies, man. You got a few weddies, man.
Yeah. I'm just picturing that. Yeah, like, jeez. I'm just thinking like Reckoner in the Oasis looking for donations, and then just what happens when they don't get them. God, that's a horrifying thought, honestly. That's... Ugh. Have you ever seen what an Oasis in a safe zone looks like? They've got security. And by security, I don't just mean the kind that bleeds. I mean the kind that drops from the ceiling and starts shooting at you. So...
Yeah.
Flash rave encounter. Actually, oh man. We might,
looking at this.
We might need to one of these days we might, and if I'd thought this one through, this was, again, I remind all of our viewers, listeners, etc. This was a pivot. So if I had thought this through, this would have been fun to build the random encounter table of the Wireheads podcast with chat. We might need to do that in the future, make a plan for that so we can tell people it's going to happen. Because I like a lot of the ideas you're presenting right now, guys, and I kind of want to compile that. It'd be a fun little one, but I want to make sure that we're, not duplicating stuff out of the core rulebook, which, again, I did not come prepared for this. The homework was not something I did on this
That's why you have topic. Me.
Right, true. That's I have the walking, talking reference for the rule book right next to me on the show every week. How could I forget?
The bodega random encounter table, though, is fantastic for, like, just moments where you're stopping in to, pick something up. sometimes you can actually build because some people, they have that bar they go to, some people have that club they go to. For one of my crews, it is a bodega. I don't know, Emmerron, have you ever had a crew that like literally their meeting point is the bodega, that they is a bodega? Ever?
I don't think so. Not at least in the stuff that I've written. Obviously, there's one in particular that partway through a gig, the bodega turns into a meeting point that we're both aware of, and I'm not going to say what or whatever to spoil it for any groups.
That one.
But you and I both know which one we're talking about. There's that one, but like, yeah, I don't know that I've ever used a bodega as a central meeting point. Usually I tend to use bodegas more as like sub-objective points within a gig, because things like there's a couple of pre-written ones that kind of imply using them that way, and then when I kind of haphazardly, just as for the purpose of an example, wrote the Vendit heist thing that I have, that even was like, you've got a bodega right next door with security cams that overlook the area. So like it creates a sub-objective. I've never thought of convenience stores as a great meeting up point. Usually that is something I push to mostly clubs, or at the minimum, I'll do something like an alley or parking lot near a location. But yeah, I've always thought of bodegas as being kind of a weird one.
Weird, yes, but this was also like early on in that group's campaign as well. Just so happened that the cashier that was rolled was a yo-ganger who got shackled to the register by their parents. So, every once in a while, they'd come in, check on the kid, and it's like, all right. And finally, the quest camp was just like, all right, kid, why are you handcuffed to the register? And it's like, and finally, the explanation that they got was just like, well, I have to stay here while the others go out, but mom and dad haven't come back in a couple days. Could you go check on them? I'll give you what's in the register.
Oh boy. Well, that's fun.
One of the edge runners, who happens to be a lawman, just like, oh no, don't make me do this off company time. And it's just like, oh well, hey, free shit out of the bodega, why not?
Yeah, get a little money, get a couple snacks, it'll be great.
Yeah, and end of that quest, they end up finding dad. Mom, on the other hand, look, sometimes, you gotta get out, you gotta go party. Mom ended up partying a little too hard, and well, she took a little swim in the drink, if you would. But also have had the adorable runaway 4-year-old who is looking for their mother. That was a good side quest as well for one of my other groups, which ended up them finding out that this kid belongs to their fixer. It's like, wait, you have a kid? And it's just like, yes, here's 500 ads. We don't talk about this. Free money. But also on top of that, do you ever randomize when they encounter like net defense? Do you ever randomize like what the turret has by chance? Because I've also done that before as well.
Randomize what the turret has in terms of what, ammo or gun or
weaponry, ammo, other stuff like that.
So usually when I'm placing a defense somewhere, I'm doing it very purposefully. So like I tend to pick a lot of the time, like this is going to be a rifle turret or this is going to be a pistol turret and it's going to use this type of ammo.
Okay.
I'm usually pretty deliberate when I do that. Because like the one random table that I find is only very moderately helpful is the generation table for net architectures. Like,
Right.
it can be a really good idea in terms of like giving you a starting point to be like, okay, here's what the randomizer says I should have. But once you kind of are like, okay, I have a random network, you're going to need to massage it. It's like a great way to start to make sure you're not like overscaling difficulty on ice or something like that. But like, it'll nearly never give you something that's like purely appropriate or workable in the environment that you are, you know, trying to send your players into. Usually, in my experience, it's like I said, great for like a prototype, great to like get something out on paper so that you can then more tailor build it. But like, it's not very good to just roll the net and then just run it as promised. And I view in place defenses kind of in the same category as that. Like, yeah, you could randomize some of it, but like, you're probably tailor making that to fit a certain narrative or a certain use case or something like that.
I suppose in my case, when I've rolled like for like net defenses, it's just like I kind of determine, okay, what's the budget this group has, and it's just like, okay, well, let's see what this corporate building might have that would make sense. And it's just like, of course, you know, a group like Zarafa, industrial goop would make sense. Which also, by the way, goop is a great trap. I highly recommend it.
That one's underutilized. Goop is underutilized. I think that thing it should be used a little more, even by me.
Goop is great.
Goop is great. We love Goop.
Also, Tanglefoot flooring is fun as well. It's a cheaper variant of Goop, but like it does work. I've used that in Militech. A fun little twist you could put on it as well is it shreds away at your armor when you're passing through. But yeah, that's what I was looking at when it came to like random encounters with in place defenses. Was just like, do you let the dice determine what this group might have set up in the place? But yeah, maybe that one does take some time to.
The closest I would get to something like that would be, this is something I actually do recommend people do, is like, maybe you want a pretty defined group, you know, like you're making a scav den, let's just say for the case of the example, right? You're making a scav den, so you know you're probably throwing a lot of like very, you know, low rank to no rank kind of enemies, a lot of mooks, probably wearing nothing stronger than Kevlar, and most of them probably aren't even wearing that much, right? But you have the stuff from the hardened mooks table, that random 10 entry table at the start of that DLC, that you might decide, okay, this is a fairly homogenous group with fairly homogenous weapons, and I want them to have less homogeny. So like, I've got an equal number +2 to the players at my table for this encounter, because it's their home turf, so there needs to be a little bit of added resistance. Plus my players are, maybe they're not hardened, but they're very capable, right? But one or two of them maybe would qualify as hardened. So I'm gonna roll so that 2, maybe 3, if I feel like that we need to add a little extra spice, of these mooks have a bonus as determined by that roll 10 table, to see like what happens, right? Or what they happen to have on them, to just mix it up a little bit. So like, most of the rank and file here are gonna have the same stuff, because all of them kind of, you know, have the same general kit, or maybe they've got a tech is part of their group that has supplied them with a pretty standard kit or whatever. And then there's like the 3 in the back that are like, they decide when the player's pushing a little too far, they're like, all right, we're gonna we're gonna lift up that engage that we scored off that transport. We're gonna blow them the fuck out of here. Whole wall can go. I don't give a shit. Yeah, and so then they raise that gunmart engage.
I've nearly killed a party with a scav that had a gunmart engage in a dream. I've nearly killed a party with that. Gave them all critical injuries.
Right, and so
it's a great time.
So yeah, something like that can be really nice to like scramble the homogeny a little bit, and also present like just a little bit of randomness to the encounter that you as the GM then really don't need to think about. And even if you're like me running on a VTT, it takes me like 5 seconds to modify a token to be compliant with like whatever tool I've gotten off that random roll table. So like that's not a hard way to add randomness without losing your intended kind of thread, let's say. You can just randomize gear or loadout, or supplement the loadout with an additional tool or additional weapon of some kind that makes them more threatening than they otherwise would be. Mixing it up also by inserting a variety of enemy stat blocks. So like you maybe have like most of the people on the scene are booster gangers, or maybe you've got a combination of like booster gangers and bodyguards, talking from like the core rulebook stat blocks that we get by default. And then maybe you include like 2 that are hardened, just to add that extra little bit of spice, who have maybe a little better gear, the skill bases are better on them, you know, and either you choose those custom upgrades or you roll for them. That's another way you can kind of do that, so that you got that homogeny kind of scattered up a little better than it otherwise would be.
Yeah. And of course, some other notable encounter, like random encounter generations. Well, almost random encounter generations. Of course, we got digital dating in the dark future. Great for, you know, creating new characters to add to someone's life. I like it. It's super helpful in that case. We've also got let's see. I'm trying to think what else. Night City weather for random weather. Also very weird weather as well. We also have the random night market tables as well, if these guys stumble across a small night market.
Right. Which I'll be honest, that's one that I've like vacillated on like how useful it is, because there's some cases where like it can be like if the players really want to look up like a local night market. I find night markets are usually better as storytelling tools than they are as kind of a random, we happened across this thing. So I'm a little more deliberate usually. That's like, usually that's where I start saying like, there's the pretty well established, I'd say, concept of, from those of you who are familiar with D&D, of like a GM wish list, where it's every player submits a list of like 3 or 5 items that they're like, I really want to get my hands on this at some point. Please afford me an opportunity. And then when the GM is building the reward structure for a gig, they can take those lists into account when they're deciding on like what rewards or incentives to throw in. That can be a way to do that. And night markets are like kind of a great way to like take advantage of that and make sure that those things are on the menu in addition. That makes it feel a little less bad if you're going to use them a little more randomly, but I know I'm in the camp that very much likes to be very purpose driven with like when I present things like night markets, because to me they are more like, even though midnight markets are more like the invite only, like you only get in the door if you're on the list kind of thing, even regular night markets can kind of have the air of that, where it's like you need to know what's happening, and in order to do that you need to know a fixer who will be offering stuff at it, or you need to have a reason to be there, right? Or have found out about it. But I don't know, that's something that's more definitely subjective. That's definitely more of a me thing than I think it would be like general advice to everyone.
very much. This is true societal danger. Night markets are progression in themselves as if your players have cash to blow.
Yep.
Which, yeah, this is true. I also like to allow for the occasional like random night market to come up because every once in a while you might just come across something that you didn't know you wanted or needed.
Right.
Because the targeted advertising isn't getting to you. In that case, then we need to up your subscription, baby. Anyway, also, John the Wise, his 3 goon method is good for creating some variants on your mooks.
Yeah.
As well. And Rob Mulligan also has a great plot generator as well in his Listen Up expansion. I've used that a few times where it's just like, okay, I don't really have a solid plan for today. Let's make a quick mission. And I use that.
I will just caveat that John's 3 goon method, I think he did develop that before the core rules were a thing. And obviously we've seen them published long after, in his Listen Up. But like, what I might recommend is if you're going to use his 3 goon method, bump the numbers by 2. Because I think that, especially if you're deeper into a campaign, if you use the 3 goon method as is and don't give them just a little extra oomph, you might find that they fall far flatter than you were expecting them to. I've definitely heard that feedback from like a couple of different players now that they're like, yeah, I used the 3 goon method, but it just didn't work out. My players just rolled over them. And I'm like, yeah, that's because their numbers are a little lower than what like Danger Gal Dossier would recommend for those same level of enemies. So like if you bump things by like 2, you're probably going to be off to the running pretty easy. Yeah. But I just noticed how far we are into my half days here. So
jump over to the other side.
I think it will. So for those of you who are watching on YouTube, this is where my half of the episode ends. As usual, the second half of the episode that Diamond Dust runs and will put up on her channel is going to be down in my description here. So please go over there, finish the conversation because it's going to be a good one. Because this time, Diamond, remind everyone what we are going to be talking about on your half of the episode.
Unconventional campaigns and teams. But I think I may just whittle that down to unconventional campaigns. So we'll get into it. Trust me, if you're an Elflines fan, if you're a roller derby fan, if you're a stickball fan, or insert any other side activity that's your Edge Runner's obsession type of fan, get over there.
Yep.
It does, in fact, involve the ELO sweep. So I'll see you on the other side.
Yep. We'll see you over there, guys.
Bye.